Okay. Good afternoon. I've been told I'm supposed to hit the gavel now to start the meeting. It's new for me. So anyway, welcome. Today is March 19th, 2025, and this is the meeting for the City of Murfreesboro Planning Commission. We'll call our meeting to order. We do have a quorum present this afternoon. Did we have any public comments register for the meeting today? No? Okay, our first item of business is to approve minutes of the March 5th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting. We've had a chance to review those ahead of time.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Jacob?
Ms. Savelwater?
Aye.
Mr. Carroll?
Aye.
Vice Chair Halliburton?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Prince? Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Chair Jones?
Aye. Next, we have our consent agenda, quite lengthy. But again, we've all had a chance to review that prior to the meeting. Did anybody have any items they would like removed from the consent agenda for further discussion? And if not,
Chair, I have an item on the consent agenda that I need to abstain from, so I'll just abstain from the whole agenda to make it easier.
okay.
Me as well on that.
All right, we still have a quorum, so
Other than that, move for approval. Second.
we have a motion and a second. Ms. Jacob?
Ms. Savelwater?
Abstain.
Mr. Carroll?
Abstain.
Vice Chair Halliburton?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Prince? Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Chair Jones?
Aye. Okay. Moving into the GDO portion of our agenda, we have one item there today, and this is the Ascension St. Thomas Rutherford Hospital fourth floor addition. This is initial design review and a potential final design review and site plan review for a 12,634 square foot fourth floor addition on 68.4 acres, zoned light industrial and GDO 3, located at 1700 Medical Center Parkway. Medicel Corporation is the developer. Good afternoon, Mr. Barbie.
Good afternoon, Chair Jones and members of the Murfreesboro Planning Commission. This item on your GDO portion of your agenda today is a request from Ascension St. Thomas Rutherford Hospital for a 12,634 square foot addition onto their existing facility. The addition you can see in your image before you is on the most eastern end of the facility, right above the emergency center and ambulance drop-off area. It's the fourth floor look that you can see that is in bold color while everything else has been faded back. The design team has also provided images showing how the rooftop equipment will be screened and not visible from the public right-of-ways. This site is already existing. As such, they have no site work that is included as a part of this addition. Building materials, colors, and designs are all in place to match the existing structure that's there on site. As this is a matching addition to the existing facility and no site work is proposed, staff is requesting that you consider this as initial and final review at the same meeting, if you should so choose. I'm available if you have questions, and the design team is also with us here today if you have any questions from them. They have been nice enough to provide a material sample board that I'll pass around to you now.
And I guess an addition like this doesn't affect like need for parking or things like that, or there have plenty of parking anyway?
Yes, ma'am. The hospital has got an abundance of parking on site that is available for visitors to utilize.
Does anybody have any specific questions regarding this request? And we also need discussion regarding initial and final design review. If you all are in agreement, we should do both today.
I'm fine with it.
Go ahead.
Yo, I'm good.
All right.
Go.
I'll make a motion that we approve and we move forward with initial and final site review,
Second.
subject to all staff comments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Ms. Safelwater?
Aye.
Mr. Carroll?
Aye.
Vice Chair Halliburton?
Aye.
Mr. Harris? Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Chair Jones?
Aye. Okay. Plats and plans portion of our agenda, and we have 3 items here today. The first item is City Tile Dock and Parking Addition. It's a site plan for a 14,000 square foot office/warehouse building addition on 1.01 acres, zoned CBD and CCO, located along South Academy Street and East Sevier Street. Andrew Young is the developer. Ms. Smith, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Jones and Commission. You may recognize this particular property. You had seen a different site plan review on this particular site, which is bounded by Sevier Academy and, I'm trying to see the little tiny street, I can't see it. Spring, thank you. In the drawing above, the colorized portions on the streets are the downtown revitalization Main Street plan streetscape types. And so since their last approval, they have reconsidered and decided to go to 2 floors of a building. So both would be warehouse space as well as office space, so that they have office space, conference room, those sort of things on their second floor. But the site itself, the layout, the streetscapes that you previously approved as a Type 1 streetscape along South Academy, which is that parallel parking in the street, and the Type 2 streetscape, which is an angled parking with a sidewalk behind it along Sevier, is still incorporated in this project. And when you look at those spaces that they're providing, what I would call immediately adjacent to their site, plus the site ones on their site, there's 19 available spaces. However, it is in the CBD zone district, which does not require any parking, but there is immediately adjacent as well as on-site pre-existing parking that they're looking at continuing. As you can see in the bottom drawing here, the corner of Spring and Sevier Street, this is their current front main entrance that then goes into some warehouse space along the back side, and where you're seeing those improvements would be more visible from Academy Street, so they would remove this single-family dwelling that's currently on site, take the new building all the way to the current edge of the building. They have already consolidated their 3 plats or individual lots that you've seen previously. And then here you can see a zoom in of what that would look like on the corner. So this is that Type 2 streetscape that would actually have angled parking here with kind of a concrete edge that's flush with the street along that side, and you can see the 2 parking spaces out here in the front. When we're looking at the layout for this particular plan, we clarified some things with the architect this morning, the contractor, and I'm trying to think the best way to pass this. Well,
I don't know if we,
this is kind of like block 1, that they have, which is called kind of a smooth face, so it kind of cuts away that front face that they would be looking at using along the majority of the building, but earlier have agreed to put a little bit more of that stacked stone look to where it would go to the bottom of the second floor. And got my workout for the day, that's a good 25 pounds.
yeah.
So what they have agreed to do, as we were looking at, and we just got the sample the other day in our office, is as you're looking at this front facade, they have agreed to take that stacked stone up to this level on that front facade, and that little bit that wraps the side of the building so that you have more of a primary with that stacked stone. When you look at their layout and other improvements for the building. They're looking at having a 24 by 36 limestone tile on their tower feature, as well as a wood grain tile. And this is that stone veneer that they're looking at adding a little bit more. It'll add about 3 more feet to that front facade, and their existing building is the existing painted CMU type wall. When we're looking at the layout of the building, the main difference from the last plan that you had reviewed is there's this pop-out staircase. That's an enclosed staircase that has been added to the building so that there will be 2 ways to access the second floor. One will be here on the side of the building, which is the north side, and then the other way would be into a elevator lobby that has both staircase and an elevator off the front side of the building. And then other access into the building would be here between the old building and the new building into that warehouse storage space on the ground floor. And the upper floor would have these offices for use by the business itself, and you can see break room, bathrooms, conference room, all included. So 7,000 square feet on the second floor, 7,000 square feet on the ground floor. So with that, staff believes that we would recommend approval of the project, and the only thing that we would make a modification on the staff comments is just capturing that stacked stone veneer would be taken to the bottom of this belly band that you can kind of see right here. So it would still keep that belly band, double belly band in place, and take the stacked stone to there and just wrap the corners as part of their approval. So with that, I don't know if the engineer is here, if he has anything to add or if you have any questions, but we're excited that we can see our 50-year-old business continue to work well and be working more efficiently in downtown, and we appreciate all the work and effort that they put into making a really nice looking building.
Okay. I think it looks great. I'm excited about it. Looks really good, and like you said, a great addition to downtown and keeping that downtown business going. What other questions and comments, any concerns anyone has?
Yes, Holly, can we talk about their dock, their truck exiting the dock and pulling out onto Academy?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm a little nervous about that because that's a 4-way stop there, right?
I think it's currently only a 2-way stop, because I know I've almost gotten hit in that intersection, because one intersection has 2-way going the opposite way, and this one's different, but our engineering department did look at this.
I want to say Sevier has the stop condition, and I think Academy is free-flowing. Ms. Knoll, is that correct?
I think that's correct.
Academy does not have a stop condition there. Okay, thank you.
So if Academy doesn't have a stop sign and the truck exits, these are 18-wheelers or smaller?
Looks like 18-wheelers.
Matt Taylor from SEC. He will have some 18-wheelers at times. Other times there's more box trucks than there are 18-wheelers, though.
Okay, so when the truck exits, Matt,
Yes, ma'am.
it'll probably turn right, I assume.
More than likely.
I mean, a box truck, I guess, could make that pretty easily, but can an 18-wheeler get out of there and turn left or right? If I recall, Academy is kind of tight, right?
There's a wider pavement section there, so we did one turning movement where it would go back to the north, and we can do another turning movement for showing going to the south as well if you'd like.
Do you have a
Or turn it right,
Do you have a
sorry.
rendering of it to show the?
On the
radius of those
utility
turns?
plan, I don't, is the full civil package in there? I don't know if it's in the agenda or not.
Utility might not be. I can just scroll up and see if we've got it.
No, it's not there.
It's not.
No. Yeah, I
We-
don't see
We have provided one to staff. I can hand you my paper copy if you'd like.
So, I mean, engineering signed off on this? Chris's team?
Yes, Ms. Knoll,
All right. I just know if I'm coming down Academy and I get stopped because there's a box truck back and forward and back, I'm going to think of this. I'm going to call you, Matt.
Got my number.
And I think the advantage that they were looking at here when we first started talking about this is that currently they are stopping traffic in Sevier. They're actually parking in Sevier.
They are, that's true.
So you have to kind of dodge going around them to make it to City Hall. I make that trip on a regular basis. But we also did go out in the field when we first started talking about this and made sure that, I think they were looking at corner clearances and that sort of thing. But we'll double check that is updated, maybe Matt, to include that turn template.
Okay, great. Well, City Tile, thanks for your investment in the downtown area, wherever y'all are.
If there are no other questions, I move for approval, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Motion and a second, Ms. Jacob.
Ms. Saberwater?
Aye.
Mr. Carroll?
Aye.
Vice Chair Halliburton?
Aye.
Mr. Harris? Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Chair Jones?
Aye. Okay. Excellent. All right, our next item, item B, is Mercury Park, Blocks 4 and 5, an amended site plan for 29 multifamily residential dwelling units in 8 buildings on 3.12 acres, zoned PUD, located along South Hancock Street and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Murfreesboro Housing Authority is the developer. Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Chair Jones. You may recall this project well, kind of a repeat. You saw it back in January, and as the applicant was working through site plans, they came into a couple of difficult challenges, and so we're back here with kind of an amended site plan within those same blocks that are off of Hancock and Minor, basically affecting most of Minor Street. So as you're looking at this page on screen, the upper screen shows the original layout for landscape and unit types, where you can see the unit types were single-family and duplex type units there, and here they're proposing just 2 buildings that are more of the townhome style that you already see on this frontage, which they share a parking lot, so parking hasn't changed, unit count hasn't changed. But the other thing that you'll notice here is kind of a little bit of a simplification here to, the sidewalks, which is actually closer to their program book, and then they've added some drainage in this location, which gives them a little bit more separation on the project site. So what that looks like from a elevation site within the document, scroll to the page, we had them do kind of a side-by-side comparison on one of their pages, so it would be clear to see what you originally approved back in January. So if you're looking at Minor Street, so this would be the north face of the buildings. The one on the top is the elevations that was originally approved. The one directly below it, delineated as E and D, are their proposals. And again, you can see this clearly the 7 doors here, where here it's a little bit harder to see what's the difference between some of the duplex units versus a single-family detached unit, which is what they're currently building if you haven't driven out in the field lately. And then the second portion is what you would see on the back side, so meaning this is what would face that interior parking lot, what you previously approved, and then what they're proposing to have in its place. So the Executive Director, Thomas Rowe, is in the audience, as well as their architect, should you have any questions about this particular project. But based on those things and looking in the program book, because it's not changing the unit count, staff would recommend that they are generally in good order and recommend approval subject to all staff comments.
Okay. Else have any questions regarding that?
If there are none, I'll make a motion that we approve, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Jacob?
Ms. Saberwater?
Aye.
Mr. Carroll?
Aye.
Vice Chair Halliburton?
Aye.
Mr. Harris? Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Chair Jones?
Aye.
Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Smith.
you, Housing Authority, for your continued excellent work.
Lots going on with, y'all are busy, and we appreciate it. It all looks great. Our next item, item C, is the Volunteer Fleet Services Site Plan for 6,226 square feet motor vehicle repair. It's medium and heavy-duty commercial vehicles. Facility on 1.5 acres, zoned PID, located along Logistics Way. Volunteer Fleet Services is the developer. Ms. Smith.
Well, hello again. You may recall this site from maybe a couple of years ago. Originally, this was going to be the Kona Ice location, which has recently changed out over time, and Volunteer Fleet Services, which is actually currently located across the way, closest to this Richard Reeves Drive currently, and they're looking at building a facility there that would actually service their medium heavy-duty vehicles in the particular location. This particular one is part of a planned industrial district, and when you look at that planned industrial district, over time there's some changes and modifications that are made to the city's zoning code and others made to planned developments. This last planned development actually modified in 2022, but staff went ahead and, at the risk of the applicant, they have submitted for a site plan review and concurrently have submitted a rezone of their PID because the use that they are proposing is not currently an allowed use within the district. So what we're looking at was kind of site plan review doesn't meet the standards of a planned development, set aside the use, and it looked like as we were reviewing that, yes, it would meet the architecture, the parking, the height requirements, all of those specifics, with the exception of the use. And so as we're looking at that and put together the staff conditions, you know, you can build a building and until there's a use in it, that's when it's really determined whether or not, you know, you can or you can't. So let's say for whatever reason council says we don't like that use, we don't want to approve it, you could put something else in the building. It doesn't necessarily negate that. So at their own risk, they are moving forward with this. Two different engineers working on the project site, but in reviewing all of the items within that, staff believes that would recommend approval subject to all staff comments and the adoption of a PID zone amendment that would allow for that motor vehicle repair, medium and heavy-duty commercial vehicles, excluding sales and rental, for this lot and this lot only. Staff believes when we're looking at the entirety of this PID is that auto-related repair uses weren't really anticipated, and so we wouldn't want to see that continue throughout the PID, but we think because their current location is much more sensitive to the adjacent residential uses, putting that in this particular location where it's much closer to heavier industrial uses makes better sense. And that's one of the reasons why we're recommending approval of the site plan subject to those conditions and comments. And I believe, Huddleston Steel is here regarding the site plan should you have any questions on this particular project. And then shortly we will be talking about the PID amendment.
So are they moving, or they will have two different sites?
I believe they're moving. I got the confirmation, yes, they are moving.
Okay.
How many other tracks over there are in this same zone that may want to come back and ask for the same rezoning to do auto mechanic stuff in this development, not necessarily on this road?
So this particular area, and you'll see as we talk about the rezone, we're suggesting that it be in what we call Area 3 or Region 3, which is the most intense of all of the industrial uses. The only ones that are left in that particular zone district are south of the end of Logistics Way. So basically where Logistics Way stops and it goes down in the future to Elam Road, that portion is the only portion that's in that would be in this same district that is not built out.
Ms. Smith, the PID amendment would be limited to...
Correct.
This use would be limited to this particular parcel.
But his question was, if somebody else in the future wanted to ask for it, would there be a likelihood?
Yeah, I mean, I don't
If
want
it's
to...
only Region 3, there is some Region 3 that's not developed yet.
Yeah, but I don't want to start a slippery slope of, let's say, another building that's already built out, and then go, oh, we got a new user that wants to do auto mechanic stuff, and now we have this lot over here where we changed zoning, so now we need to change zoning on this one, and this one, and that one, and this one over here. It could start a slippery slope.
You know, one thing that I will say is that we field a lot of inquiries from Swanson about potential users that they get for this development. Some are allowed, some are not allowed by the current zoning, and so, you know, we tell them what we would be supportive of as staff from an amendment standpoint, but I would suspect, and Mr. Swanson's in the back row over there, that this may not be the last amendment that we'll see. Maybe not for this particular use, but you know, as he has had different users come in for Victory Station on Franklin Road, you know, that plan development has been amended a number of times to accommodate uses that weren't anticipated, and this is the second or third amendment request for Parkway Place, and so it's you know, whether it's the vehicle repair use or another use that they did not anticipate, it would not surprise me if there would not be another amendment at some point in the future.
I'm fine with other amendments. I just want to make sure if somebody else comes through with an auto, that we don't throw roadblocks in somebody trying to do the same exact thing on another track in the same area, when these two are going to be exempted, and then you have some other person try to do the same thing. I just don't want to throw roadblocks in that person's way.
I think, as Ms. Smith mentioned, we tried to figure out where it made sense and that it wouldn't have too much impact on the adjacent residential uses. But and Mr. Swanson may speak to this, whether or not he would envision needing that use as a permitted use elsewhere within the plan development that we're not contemplating. Mr. Swanson, would you mind coming up to the podium?
Joe Swanson, 1188 Park Avenue. Of course, this is a speculative subdivision. We do have it as a planned industrial district. This particular tenant, at the time that he occupied his current location in this PID, it was permitted, but it was very vague. The city came back and updated the ordinance, and we found a couple other things we needed to clean up in the amendment, which we'll get into next item. This was just one of those things that just happened to work out with this amendment and this user. I don't foresee it, but I can't tell you that it won't come up, and I can't tell you that there won't be something different than this type of use. But what Holly's saying is that we've taken this use request and pushed it as far away from the residential as we can and put it in the most industrial area.
So Joe, or Mr. Swanson, the place that they're existing building now,
right,
that they're moving from,
yes.
If I was wanting to do the same thing that they're doing, can I do it in that old building now or not?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
No.
And I think what we discovered, you know, absent any other information that Mr. Swanson might have, I think what we discovered is that this was, where they're located now was likely an oversight on staff's part. We can't find anything in the previous list of permitted uses that identified any kind of motor vehicle repair as a permitted use anywhere in the plan development. So I think what we determined was that it was, well, we don't know exactly, we suspect that it was likely an oversight at some point.
I mean, I think your argument is if you're moving them away, but that's what I wanted to hear, because in defense of your application, that way that the next user won't be able to do that's next to the neighborhood, you know.
Correct.
So
correct.
Okay,
We made a
thank
couple
you.
other
That's good.
changes too,
Yeah.
didn't we?
Good question.
Thank you.
That's where I was going with that.
Is there any other questions? 'Cause if not, I will make a motion to approve this site plan, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Motion and a second, Ms. Jacko.
Ms. Saberwater?
Aye.
Mr. Carroll?
Aye.
Vice Chair Halliburton?
Aye.
Mr. Harris? Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Chair Jones?
Aye. All right, then moving on into our new business. First item is the zoning application to amend the Parkway Place PID on approximately 151 acres located along Joe P. Jackson Parkway, Richard Reeves Drive, and Logistics Way. Swanson Developments LP is the applicant. Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Chair Jones. As you can see in the above depiction, this is the entire PID area, so the one that we were just talking about is located right up in this section of the PID, but the things that we're looking at are more than that particular item, but that is one of the items that we've taken the opportunity to do some cleanup while we're looking at it. So you may recall the last time you all looked at it was back in 2022, so I think there's a couple of new faces that weren't here in 2022. And so we did keep the prior amendments in your program book, and so when we did look at that, on your screen, all the areas in orange are really what we call Region 2, which are more like incubator-type businesses that were anticipated on both sides of Richard Reeves Drive in this location. With that amendment, we also added this area to Area 2 as well, and you can see it's directly along, really, Region 3 is the southerly section. And so what we were looking at in this particular amendment is, if you compare that with this map changes that orange color on the westerly side of Richard Reeves Road to what we call Region 3. And Region 3, as we stated earlier, is the more intense use area. It is not adjacent to single-family residential. Your single-family residential is adjacent to what we call Region 2 and Region 4. So here's Region 4 and Region 2. So what we're looking at to, one, help everybody a little bit easier separate the differences, because the idea is you more protective in what kind of uses you allow close to the residents, less so when you're on the opposite side. So what staff, Ben actually thought of it, why don't we just change it to Region 3? And when we looked at the policies, it made sense, because we had in the use table, hey, this is only allowed on the west side of Richard Reeves Road, which is a little bit, not as intuitive to actually apply. So also what we looked at, that first kind of land use amendment that we're looking at is listed here in 1A, which is requesting that the allowable uses for Lot 16, which is that particular lot that the volunteer fleet's located on, include a motor vehicle repair, medium heavy duty commercial vehicles, excluding sales and rentals, to be added to the use table. And then there were a couple of other uses that, as we've made changes in the city's zoning code, have started to have some differentiations. So we're looking at the dry cleaning type use, whether it's a small scale or large scale, being included as it's similarly written in our zoning code. The contractor's yard and storage, that one was one of those carve-outs where it was allowed in Region 2 on the west side of Richard Reeves. So now that we're proposing that area be part of Region 3, it no longer needs to be in the chart. And then the other categories, really putting those into their applicable top categories. And then the last one down here is E, which I think you just recently weighed in on, was that kind of regional hub. This was one of the new uses that was determined out of there, because we did have two different warehousing and transportation ones, so we wanted to be consistent. And then here you can kind of see the acreage differences for what the approved acreage in each of those units areas were and what it will be should the amendments be approved. And then looking at the zoning commercial table, It's always the one-pager I like because it makes, this is what we go to every time we get a call to make sure that use is allowed in a district, is they've highlighted in yellow those areas that we just discussed within the table itself. And then, of course, the map being updated throughout. So with those changes, we think it's adequate to move forward for a public hearing, and staff requests that we set the public hearing date for April 9th during your next evening meeting. And should there be any questions today or things that you would like to see added that are not described here, let us know, and we'll make sure to include those prior to the public hearing. And then again, the applicant is in the audience, and we appreciate working together and making it a little bit easier to implement.
And you heard she did mention April 9th. Just as a reminder, our April night meeting was moved to the second Wednesday of the month because of spring break.
Anybody have any questions or changes or anything they're concerned about before we schedule this for a public hearing?
If not, I'll make a motion, we schedule a public hearing for April the 9th.
Second.
Motion and a second, Ms. Jenko.
Ms. Overwater?
Aye.
Mr. Carroll?
Aye.
Vice Chair Halliburton?
Aye.
Mr. Harris? Aye. Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Chair Jones?
Aye.
Thank you so much, Commission.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Our next item, item B, is an annexation petition and plan of services for approximately 13.74 acres located along Yergin Road. Shane and Dwayne Beard are the applicants. Mr. Donovan, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Jones, members of the Planning Commission. The annexation petition before you today was submitted by Shane and Dwayne Beard. They're seeking for their parcel to come within the city limits. This annexation includes one parcel and approximately 610 feet of road frontage of right-of-way for Yergin Road. Rutherford County Highway Commission has reviewed and consented to annexation of their right-of-way at the March 3rd meeting. The property is currently vacant, and the total annexation area, including right-of-way and the parcel, is approximately 13.74 acres. This application or petition also has an associated zoning request that we'll look at next with it to rezone the property to RS10. That would potentially allow this lot to be subdivided further into 21 lots, which they've provided us a concept of. The annexation study area is located within our urban growth boundary. It is also contiguous with the current city limits of Murfreesboro along its northern and western boundaries. The comprehensive plan future land use map identifies a service infill line, which this falls within that service infill line. Staff is currently working with other city departments on formulating a plan of services for this potential annexation, and we'll provide that to you at the public hearing along with the staff report. The Planning Commission will need to discuss the annexation petition and plan of service and schedule a public hearing. Staff is recommending the Planning Commission schedule the public hearing for May 7th. And I'm here to answer any questions, and Mr. Brian Grover with SEC is here representing the applicant as well.
Okay. This is regarding the annexation petition and plan of services. So if anybody has any questions or concerns about that before we schedule that for a public hearing. See what the discussion is.
Well, do we usually vote on schedule for a public hearing without a plan of services?
Yes.
Okay. I feel it's been a while since we've done a companion bill like this. I'm just kind of like thrown off. Okay, then I'm good. I like to see a plan of services before we annex out on Yergin Road.
Oh, and the plan of services will certainly be there at the at the night meeting with the public hearing.
But
So-
we'll get it in our agenda the Friday before,
Yes.
before
I
the
just
meeting
thought-
on the following Wednesday, so you have
Right.
the weekend and usually 4 or 5 days to review it.
Yeah.
And all we're asking you to do this afternoon is just to schedule the public hearing. And because of the new state annexation law, our annexations have to be scheduled an extra month out, so we're recommending May the 7th. And that,
I thought you were just trying to keep our April really light, just giving us one thing to cover in the April meeting, but no, I see, okay, 2 months out.
well, there's more to come.
There's more to
Oh, okay,
Great.
thanks. All right, so we are looking to schedule a public hearing on May 7th for this item.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second, Ms. Jacob.
Ms. Abelwater?
Aye.
Mr. Carroll?
Aye.
Vice Chair Halliburton?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Chair Jones?
Aye. Okay, May 7th. Then our item C will be the companion zoning application for approximately 13.26 acres located along Yergin Road to be zoned RS10 simultaneous with annexation. Shane and Dwayne Beard are the applicants. Mr. Donovan.
Thank you, Chair Jones. So this is the companion rezoning request to the annexation we just discussed. The request is to RS10, which would allow a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet. And that potential concept of 21 single-family lots on the site. So as far as adjacent land use and zoning around this piece of property, it's currently zoned medium-density residential in Rutherford County. The surrounding area is exclusively zoned residential and has residential uses within it. Prater Farms, PRD, which is just to the north and is currently under construction. And then to the east and south are large lot, single-family subdivisions that are in Rutherford County and zoned medium-density residential. And then to the west is Magnolia Grove, PRD, which is currently under construction as well. The Prater Farms and Magnolia Grove both consist of single-family residential detached homes on individual lots with lot sizes of a mixture between 6,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet. There is some variation within Magnolia Grove depending on its location. The future land use map for this property identifies it as suburban residential, which supports density ranges of 1 to 4 dwelling units per acre, and the comprehensive future land use plan specifically mentions RS15, RS12, RS10, and PRD zoning for that SR designation. So that RS10 is recommended by the future land use map as one of the appropriate zones. Planning Commission will need to discuss this rezoning request and schedule a public hearing. Staff recommends the public hearing be scheduled for May 7th.
If there's no discussion, I make a motion, we set a public hearing on May 7th.
Second motion.
Motion and second, Ms. Jacob.
Ms. Abelwater?
Aye.
Mr. Carroll?
Aye.
Vice Chair Halliburton?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Chair Jones?
Aye. Okay. Our next item, item D, is a mandatory referral. It is to consider the abandonment of a portion of Blackman Road right-of-way located at the intersection of Blackman Road and Hartman Farm Court. SEC Inc. is the applicant. Ms. Lewis, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, thank you. For this item, the Planning Commission is being asked to consider the abandonment of a portion of Blackman Road public right-of-way. The request for abandonment is depicted in the exhibits included in the agenda materials. The segment to be abandoned is the remaining portion of right-of-way from the realignment of Blackman Road. The Planning Department has reached out to utilities and other city departments for comments regarding the impact of abandoning this segment of Blackman Road right-of-way, and staff will provide the Planning Commission with a summary of those comments at the public hearing. The Planning Commission will need to discuss the right-of-way abandonment request and schedule it for a public hearing, and staff recommends you schedule that public hearing for April 9th. So we'll make the April meeting a little heavier.
A little more to do in April. Okay, any questions? And if not, we're ready for a motion to set the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Jacob?
Ms. Savelwater?
Aye.
Mr. Carroll?
Aye.
Vice Chair Halliburton?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Chair Jones?
Aye. Okay. Our next item, item E, is a proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance related to regulations for institutional group assembly uses, including school uses, and pertaining to the following sections. Section 7, site plan review. Section 9, standards for special permit uses. Section 19, residential districts. Section 27, landscaping and screening. Chart 1, uses permitted by zoning district and its endnotes. And endnotes for Chart 2, the minimum lot requirements, minimum yard requirements, and land use intensity ratios. The City of Murfreesboro Planning Department is the applicant. Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And if the Cable Department could put up my computer screen on the big screens and on the screens in front of the planning commissioners, I would appreciate it. Thank you. So, and Ms. Averwater and Mr. Wright, I'm sorry y'all have to sit through my presentation again, but I presented this at the City Council last, or a couple of Thursdays ago, proposed zoning ordinance amendment regarding school uses and institutional group assembly uses. Wanted to get City Council's feedback before we moved it on to the Planning Commission through our regular zoning ordinance amendment process. So, first of all, there were some concerns that were brought to the attention of city staff regarding the current process for the approval of schools, and that's what's categorized in the zoning ordinance as public or private schools grades K through 12. And some of the concerns were that the process was too lengthy. As we all know, schools have deadlines that they have to complete construction in order to get kids in there for a targeted school year. Also, too much uncertainty regarding certain design requirements. Buffering is a good example, as the type and amount of buffering in most circumstances is not set by the ordinance, but rather is determined by the Board of Zoning Appeals. And so, while the Board of Zoning Appeals has done a great job figuring out how best to buffer schools, which are oftentimes in residential zoning districts from adjacent residential uses, that leaves kind of some uncertainty in the initial design, but not knowing how to initially how to program and budget for specific buffering requirements. So the current zoning requirements that public and private schools grades K through 12 and expansions thereto are allowed by right in most commercial zones and are allowed with the granting of a special use permit by the Board of Zoning Appeals in most residential zones. And we see most of our school uses located in residential zones. So, proposed changes. And I hope y'all like my PowerPoint stock photos that I've included in here. So, one of the main changes that we're proposing is that this completely eliminates the special use permit requirement in all circumstances for school uses. And so, and that's a significant process that schools have to budget in their time schedule and in their budget for their consultants. And so it removes school uses from the purview of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
They miss seeing some good people, though.
I know, excellent people on the Board of Zoning Appeals.
I just got that.
Sorry. little levity.
So what we're proposing is to allow school uses and expansions thereto by right in all zoning districts except for park. Schools aren't currently allowed in the park zoning district, and really the only area where the park zoning district exists is where there's a city park. So in addition, we're proposing to set forth clear design standards for school uses, and as far as buffering, require a type C buffer for school uses when they are adjacent to single-family residential zoning or uses, regardless of what the underlying zoning is for the school. So if buffering is usually determined by, in all non-BZA circumstances, buffering is determined by what zone you're in and what the zone of the property next door is. So if you are if you are building a school in a zone, in an RS-15 zone, and the property next door to you is also zoned RS-15, by ordinance, you wouldn't normally be required to buffer the same zoning district next door, but when you have a use like a school that's a more intense use than another residence, then we're saying that even if the school is zoned RS-15, then a type C buffer would be required. And that's usually where staff starts off when advising the Board of Zoning Appeals when there's a special use permit for a school in a residential zoning district. So we're trying to codify what we're already recommending to the BZA. However, there will be several instances, if this ordinance amendment is approved, where rezoning to PND or PUD would be required. Number one, the school use has never previously been established on the subject property. So if it's a brand new school, whether that school is a ground-up building or whether it is a multi-tenant building is being retrofitted to have a school in one of its tenant spaces, or if it's a standalone building and the school is occupying the entire building, that use would be required to be established through the plan development process. Also, where there is a building expansion or an accessory structure with a gross floor area of 50,000 square feet or greater. So only when there is a substantial addition to the school would it be required, and it's an existing school, would it be required to go through the plan development process. So anything under 50,000 square feet would be allowed by right, would be able to go straight to the straight to the site plan review process. So for example,
No public hearing would be made, let's say, I won't name a school, but school on Thompson Lane chooses to add another school building, they would not have to come, they would not have a public hearing associated with that.
If it was less than 50,000 square feet and it was an existing school, that is correct. Also, where a plan development zoning would be required is if there were one or more athletic or recreation fields with lighting or amplified sound proposed. Then it would be required to go through the plan development process. So when a PND or a PUD is required, this proposed amendment sets forth minimum standards to be used in the site design for the plan development, which creates predictability for the schools and their design teams, which is one of our goals with this amendment. However, as with all plan developments, it allows the Planning Commission and the City Council the ability to grant exceptions to those requirements if those are warranted, and also to place any additional conditions on the approval of the plan development needed to ensure that the use is compatible with the surrounding area. So how would the proposed ordinance amendment affect site plan review and approval for schools? So in general, the majority of site plan review applications for schools will be processed administratively, which is a shorter process with additional flexibility regarding timing. And I'll give you an example of a situation. Because there is our zoning ordinance doesn't give us a whole lot of guidance with regards to when a special use permit is required for like an expansion of a use. And so, for example, there were several instances of late where some of the county schools had accessory structures, greenhouses or agricultural buildings, and those accessory buildings had to first go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a special use permit. And so what this does is for something like that, they would be able to go straight to the site plan review process without having to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals first. And in in those recent instances, for example, the campuses were so large that adding these relatively small accessory structures, when you look at the campus as a whole in the grand scheme of things, were very kind of innocuous additions to the use. Planning Commission site plan review will be required for the same 3 instances where planned development zoning is required. So once again, brand new use, the athletic fields, or the addition of 50,000 square feet or greater. So other proposed modifications that we're looking at creating additional flexibility for the maximum building height of school and church buildings. So you'll recall that we've seen a need by some school and church users to go above the maximum height. So for example, New Vision Baptist Church had to rezone their property, I think, to CMR because they were wanting to do an addition in their RS-15 zone that would not meet that would exceeded the 35-foot maximum building height. And so we're proposing some additional flexibility in the ordinance that would allow additional height for those buildings without having to go through the rezoning process. It recommends but does not require installation of irrigation systems at school uses. It separates the standards for school uses from the standards for other types of institutional group assembly uses, and it creates additional consistency in the minimum standards for other types of institutional group assembly uses. So for example, if you had another one of the uses that we see, institutional group assembly uses that has to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, oftentimes because they're located in single-family residential zoning districts, are churches. And many times as staff, if they're adjacent to single-family residential uses, we recommend the type C buffer. Here, we're trying to create some flexibility too. So when that use goes to the Board of Zoning Appeals, which churches are not proposed to be taken out of the special use permit process, that type C buffer requirement will automatically be the starting point rather than, and the Board of Zoning Appeals can of course add additional conditions as it sees fit for those other types of institutional group assembly uses, but rather than guessing at the starting point, it gives that starting point. So we think that this ordinance amendment goes a long way in addressing some of the concerns that have been brought to our attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions or address any concerns that you might have. If the Planning Commission is good with this moving forward, we would recommend a public hearing date of April the 9th.
So I have a question and a comment. Question is, I'm assuming charter schools would be defined as a public school?
Yes.
Okay. Comment is, just from the years of the whole BZA, and it's just ingrained in me, eliminating a public hearing on behalf of the neighbors that are surrounding a facility, and a 50,000 square foot building is pretty big. So if it's a 40,000 square foot building, then they're not going to have any input, is the way I'm understanding this. The neighbor, because there would be no public hearing associated with that structure.
That's correct. It would eliminate that public hearing.
I mean, I have a little uneasiness because I just remember the application recently with PCA, and there was a lot of input. I'm not saying that building wasn't over, I can't remember if it was over or under 50, but you hate to take that right away for people to have public input associated with, because it can be impactful, especially if it continues to grow in a small area, I guess is the best way to say it. That's my only reservation.
Well, and certainly understand that, Mr. Halliburton. I think what we're trying to do is to strike a balance.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea.
Yep.
I hate.
But maybe 50,000 is not the right, maybe that's.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just making a
Was there
comment.
discussion like that from council on anything in that regard?
Not really.
Y'all have, do either one of you from council sit on BZA?
No, we do not.
There's nobody on the.
Nobody from council
You brought up
on
another
BZA?
point, though, they're continually growing. So if you do small projects, small projects, small projects, small projects.
10,000 at a time.
Yeah, let's do them 10,000 at a time, and
Connecting.
we'll get 50
Cover
initially,
walkway.
but we'll get, that may be another thought to discuss also, is maybe instead of looking at it such a macro approach, there may be we may need to look at another approach of just continual growth as well.
Again, I'm not against it. I'm going to vote, well, whatever, that's not the appropriate thing to say, but I just think that, I hate taking that right away.
Public hearing, that's what he's going to vote.
Public hearing is mine.
No, she said boat, you're on a boat.
I thought you said I'm on a boat.
Well, and I think, Mr. Halliburton, just as a counterpoint to that, is that for the large-scale applications, establishing the brand-new use, the 50,000 square feet or greater, and the outdoor athletic fields.
It's a big deal.
Those will be going through a much more intensive public input process with the plan development approach. It will go through public hearings at both Planning Commission and City Council, and two bodies will have an opportunity to vet it. So what we tried to do is and albeit maybe it might be in kind of an ambiguous, or what's the word I'm looking for, an arbitrary threshold. But what we tried to do was to figure out where that threshold was, so that there is the proper level of public input and scrutiny for large-scale applications, and a path to a more efficient process for the smaller applications, to get the school systems going in the right, or going in moving forward in a more expedient fashion.
And to clarify, if it's a new school, it still has to come through the process.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, whether it's ground up or whether they're retrofitting an existing building, it'll still come to Planning Commission and City Council for public hearings and rezoning.
So this ordinance, just, if you've got already school there, we're just adding to it.
No, he said.
And if you add to it, it's under 50,000 in height, we don't have to have a hearing, right?
If it's under 50,000, yes, it would qualify for administrative site plan review.
But just for clarifying, if it's adding a soccer field or something of that nature is going to impact noise, then we would have to have a public hearing, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm good with it.
And you said, you asked a good question. Can charter schools can fall under this amendment?
Yes. Yes. So
We didn't talk about that at council, though.
I don't think we did.
Was that the wishes of council? Because I'd rather just charter schools not be under this provision.
Well, in the zoning ordinance, we don't differentiate between charter schools and traditional public schools. The zoning ordinance says public or private schools grades K through 12, and so we didn't contemplate taking charter schools out of that definition.
But we can in this, right?
I suppose we could.
But wait a minute, so are we saying a new charter school is under 50,000? we don't have to have a public hearing. Is that?
If it's a new charter
it's a new
school, it
school,
would
you-
still have to come
Yeah.
through. But I guess,
Adding the structure.
wouldn't have to.
Right.
But I guess my thought is if council's intent, when we asked planning to do this, was to save taxpayer money, save our own money, right? Because it's our taxes that pay for the schools to go through, the county to go through this application process and everything. And we talked about the ridiculous irrigation systems that the county has had to put in on school systems. But saving the charter school money doesn't save the taxpayer money. It's private money, right?
I'm not well-versed in the
It's
funding
we
mechanism.
ask, right? And but I think,
But this would apply to private schools as well, so.
Private schools are included in this too.
I thought we were just doing it for public schools.
No, we were trying to make the process more so it didn't take so long to go through the process.
Streamline the process for the school systems, so that when we're not asking them to come to BZA for every little thing they do. There are some things, would you agree, that probably
yeah,
could have been handled by
we had
staff, and that's what we're trying to get
The
there.
last thing I can remember is at Oakland and Riverdale, and they're adding a barn, and I mean, it's deer rib, whatever. I get it. I mean, it
Yeah.
makes all the sense
Yeah.
in the world.
Yeah.
If that's the case, though, I think I think I've changed my opinion then, Matthew, because if all this is true, this realization that I've just had, I think 50,000 square feet may be too big. 50,000 square feet's big.
Well, I think that's what Ken sent to us.
Yeah.
I think we discussed that at the public hearing. Is 50,000 the right size, or if there's a different size, and stream that out at a public hearing?
Yeah, and maybe even have a couple of examples of some buildings that have been added to school lately, schools that would either be under or over the 50, so you get a feel for it.
Yeah,
Sure.
50,000 is a big building.
Yeah.
It's about the size of a Publix.
Yeah.
Oh, is it really?
Right, so what school are we going to have here that's going to have an addition and has room for an addition to add a
We're Oakland.
$50,000?
I think Oakland and Riverdale, I want to say their additions recently, Riverdale and Oakland, I want to say they were about 100.
Yeah.
I'll double check that, but
They would
they
be
were
over the
really
threshold.
substantial.
And none of the field houses at the high schools they're not that big.
The Oakland and Riverdale are the two that come to my mind that would exceed that 50.
The PCA, that wasn't that large. It wasn't 50,000 foot, was it?
No, it wasn't.
No.
Was that when did we do, they had a building recently?
Y'all didn't do that. It went to BZA.
BZA, okay.
Yeah.
I
But
know
there
we
was a
did
public
football.
hearing.
Yeah.
So the additions that I can think of late are, there was one at Reeves Rogers, there was one at PCA, one at MTCS.
Yep,
I don't remember the square footage of the one at MTCS.
I don't either. And then if this is for churches too, like New Vision and,
Well, no, churches would still go to the Board of Zoning
They would,
Appeals.
okay.
So we're separating out,
okay.
but we're kind of fine-tuning the standards for other institutional group assembly uses to create more predictability.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good idea just to bring some examples of what a 50,000 or 25,000 foot building that way, and then we can discuss if 50,000 is the right footage at a public hearing.
I think if you decided to bring that down, it would be making it, I think that would be an acceptable change that would not require re-advertising of another public hearing.
Yeah, I agree. It would be substantially the same as what it currently is. We'd just be changing the number. Yeah.
Yeah. With that, I move to set the public hearing,
April 9th.
April 9th.
Second.
Motion and seconds. Ms. Jacob?
Ms. Safer-Water?
Aye.
Mr. Carroll?
Aye.
Vice Chair Halliburton?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Chair Jones?
Aye.
Now let's annex the landfill.
Okay. One more item, and it's item F, and it is the annexation petition and plan of services for approximately 843 acres located along Lebanon Pike and East Jefferson Pike, including an approximately 4,900-foot segment of landfill road ingress-egress right-of-way easement, an approximately 8,800-foot segment of Lebanon Pike right-of-way, and an approximately 7,900-foot segment of East Jefferson Pike right-of-way. City of Murfreesboro Administration Department is the applicant.
Move for approval.
Mr. Blumley. Mr. Brad?
Wow, that was easier than I thought.
Not here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to present this for Brad. He had an appointment to step out to. So we are studying for annexation the landfill property. It's owned by BFI along East Jefferson Pike. It totals about 809 acres. Back in 1995, I believe it was 1995, when the outside the city sewer customer agreement was executed, there was a clause in there that BFI would not object to the annexation of its process or of its property in the future. So we are studying it for annexation. Don't necessarily know what the outcome will be, obviously. We're still, right now we're in the process of gathering feedback from the various departments, and in order to determine the feasibility of annexing the property. And as you mentioned, Ms. Jones, we are also including in the study area a segment of Lebanon Pike State right-of-way and a segment of East Jefferson Pike State right-of-way. And our legal department has contacted TDOT to receive its statement of no objection to the annexation of its right-of-way. And we do expect to have a plan of services for you in time for the May the 7th Planning Commission date. As I mentioned, we are just, at this point, studying the potential annexation of this property and formulating a plan of services so that Planning Commission and City Council can determine whether or not they wish to move forward with it. So what we would request that you do, if you wish to move forward with us studying this property for annexation, would be to schedule a public hearing date for the annexation and plan of services for May the 7th. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And also, Mr. Sam Huddleston, Assistant City Manager, is here if you have any questions for him as well.
So go ahead.
Who owns this property?
BFI does.
And do they make the request for the annexation? Is that not the way annexation has to happen?
So typically, nothing prohibits the city from studying property that has not been requested for annexation, I think. But in this case, it's kind of unique because the agreement that was signed several decades ago, BFI indicated that they would not object to the annexation of the property in the future. And so...
Because we were giving them sewer.
Right. Yes.
And that's in all of our outside city contracts, correct?
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
This may not be a fair question, and you may not want to answer it, but what's the motive?
We don't want to answer that.
All right.
The motive is there are things happening at the landfill that the city deserves the right to have some say in.
That's a fair answer.
Considering we provide sewer and services. Is that fair, Mr. Blumley?
I will defer to Mr. Huddleston.
Y'all can defer to me. I'll fall on the sword.
I'm going to let Jamie fall on this.
Yeah.
I'm not talking.
Y'all get my mailer soon.
Hello,
Madam Chair
Mr.
Jones, members of the Planning Commission. Good to be before you today. Feels like old times.
Yeah.
Jamie, Ms. Averwater is correct that, as we look at the issues we deal with at the landfill and all that, having it inside the city's jurisdiction would give us a little more insight into the things that happen out there. Contract really limits us on being able to further restrict its use as a landfill, but we could be a little more engaged in some of the issues related to the operations and odor, and then other parts of their business operation there. They do their shops and maintenance, and they also service some of their waste customers from there with dumpsters and pickup. And so those sort of non-landfill operations would fall to us too. And then there's also the issue of revenue that the property generates, and we spend a lot of money dealing with issues at the landfill, yet we get nothing but a sewer payment from them, and that goes to our sewer department. So it also gives us a chance to capture a little bit of property tax revenue. And as things change and improve out there, as they continue to add, for example, the gas recovery system, there'll be some increases in their tax appraisals, which would result in an increase in the property tax revenue of the city. It's not substantial at this point, but it's something that as we study it from an administration standpoint, we felt like it would be a good idea to study the feasibility of annexing it and then allowing us to examine the responses from our departments, and then also discuss with city leadership and our mayor and council whether to move forward with the actual annexation.
Thank you. And today, all we would be asking you to do is, which would be to schedule a public hearing for May the 7th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, Ms. Jacob.
Ms. Saberwater.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Vice Chair Halliburton.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Prince.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye.
And I will add that Mr. Huddleston, Mr. McKnight, Mr. Newman, and I have been discussing the scheduling of a neighborhood meeting to help explain the plan of services and the reason for the study in the near future as well.
And you're going to, like, the neighborhood is going to include a whole lot more than just the 250 feet.
I think we've decided to do a 1,000-foot radius around the property, which would capture a lot of those adjacent homes on the north side of Jefferson Pike and to the in other directions as well.
Okay. Very good. All right. Do we have any other staff reports or any other business this afternoon?
The only thing that I would mention is that, and y'all probably get sick of hearing me tell you about training opportunities, but we do have the luncheon at MTSU on Friday. If you're available and you care to register for that and get a couple of hours of continuing education and a free lunch.
All right. Anything else? Anybody? Okay. All right. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.